Imagine a pill hitting the streets of your city that, for 5 minutes, turns an ordinary person into a superhuman. One capsule, and you could become bulletproof, set things on fire with a glance, hit with the force of a truck, or vanish straight into thin air. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But there's one detail that sends a chill down your spine. Nobody, absolutely nobody, knows in advance which power they'll get, or whether they'll get one at all. This drug has a simple name: power. A tiny glowing capsule you swallow without knowing what will happen a second later. Some get invisibility, some get skin that bullets bounce off like pebbles, and some get nothing good at all. Their body ignites from the inside and tears itself apart in front of horrified bystanders. 5 minutes of someone else's power, or instant death. It's roulette, and the stake is your own life. The city where this story unfolds is New Orleans. Hot, loud, full of music and poverty. And it's here that this pill spread through the streets like a disease. Teenagers film their buddy swallowing a capsule on a dare, and he either becomes a god for 5 minutes or dies in horrific convulsions. The videos go viral, and the police just stand there, helpless, because against a man bullets can't touch, an ordinary handgun is useless. At the center of it all is a girl named Robin. She's only 16, but her eyes already look grown and tired. By day, she tries to finish school, and in the evening, she sells those very capsules straight off her hands. Quick-witted, bold, with a sharp tongue and a notebook full of her own rap lyrics. She dreams of getting out of here one day and performing on a real stage. But for now, her stage is the back alleys, where she pushes a deadly product to strangers. Robin doesn't do this by choice. Back home, a sick mother is waiting. Diabetes, expensive medicine, the constant threat that without a shot, things will turn dire. There's no money, no help to be had, and the only way this girl can keep her mother afloat is by selling power. Every capsule she sells is one more day her mom gets to live. Robin hates what she does, but she simply has no choice, and the noose keeps tightening. There's another man in this city on the other side of the law, a cop named Frank. He genuinely wants to protect people, but he watches the streets slip out from under his feet. Criminals high on power rob banks, bend steel bars with their hands, and walk through walls while his colleagues cower helplessly behind their cars. The law is hopelessly outmatched, so Frank makes a decision that should have gotten him fired long ago. He decides to play by the same rules as the gangsters. Frank secretly buys power, and he buys it as it happens from Robin herself. Every time he swallows a capsule before a dangerous job, he's testing his luck. And you could say luck is on his side. Almost every time he gets the same ability, his skin turns impenetrable. Bullets just flatten against it. An armored cop who charges alone into the places a whole squad is too scared to enter. But his 5 minutes are always running out, and every single time he walks the razor's edge. To grasp how high the stakes have climbed, picture an ordinary bank robbery. Only one robber suddenly dissolves into the air, and the guards fire at nothing. A second one takes a bullet to the chest and doesn't even flinch. And then Frank shows up. A second before the fight, he swallows his capsule, his skin hardens like stone, and he walks straight into the gunfire. This isn't a shootout between men anymore. It's a clash of temporary gods, and the city watches in horror at what its streets have become. And into this boiling cauldron rolls a stranger, a tall, grim man with a heavy stare and scars on his soul. On the streets, they'll call him the Major. He doesn't deal, doesn't use, doesn't rob. He came here with one single goal: to reach the very top, the people who created this cursed pill. And for that, he's ready to turn the whole city upside down, house by house, man by man. The Major works hard and methodically. He hunts down street dealers, beats names out of them, climbs the chain higher and higher, from petty punks to their suppliers, from suppliers to whoever stands above them. He's no villain, but he's no hero in a white cape either. For his goal, he's capable of terrible things. Everyone who gets in his way quickly learns that this man will not stop. The only question is, what is really driving him? The paths of the Major and Robin inevitably cross. At first, it's a collision of enemies. He grabs her as one link in the chain, and she's terrified, fighting to break free. But very soon, a strange, fragile alliance forms between them. He needs her knowledge of the streets and her connections. She needs to survive and maybe save her mother. Two loners, each with their own pain, forced to trust one another in a city where you can trust no one. And at last, the Major reveals to the girl what really brought him here. He isn't after money or power. He's looking for his daughter. Her name is Tracy, and she was taken by the very people who cook power. This drug and his missing child are tied together far more tightly than anyone could imagine. From this moment, the whole hunt takes on a different meaning. This isn't revenge for revenge's sake. This is a desperate father following a trail. To understand the full horror of what's happening, you need to know the central secret of power. It isn't chemistry and it isn't magic. It's genetics. Every capsule carries an ability borrowed from a living creature with some incredible trait. The pistol shrimp, whose snapping claw creates a shock wave. A creature that glows in the dark. A beast with impenetrable armor. Scientists learn to pull these gifts of nature out and pack them into a single pill for a human being. And behind it all stands no street gang and no cartel. Behind it stands a vast shadow corporation. To them, power is a product worth trillions, a future weapon, a brand new market, and they didn't choose New Orleans by accident. A poor city, forgotten people, no one who cares about them. The perfect open-air laboratory where you can test a deadly drug on living people, and no one up top will so much as raise an eyebrow. An entire city turned into lab rats. But why Tracy? Why kidnap the Major's daughter? And here lies the most terrifying part. The girl carries a genetic gift rarer than any other. Her body is the source, the wellspring from which all this power is drawn. The scientists literally pump out of her what later becomes the capsules. To them, she's the goose that lays golden eggs. And for those eggs, they're willing to keep a child captive for as long as it takes. Her father knows this, and that knowledge burns him from the inside. The Major has a dark past of his own, bound up with this program. Once he was a soldier, and his own body became one of the first testing grounds for the experiments. They promised him power, and in return, they took everything. And when he was no longer useful, they came for his daughter, to continue on her what they'd started. The guilt of failing to protect his child and the fury at those who did it fused inside him into one cold, unbending resolve. Meanwhile, Robin sees ever more clearly the true price of this miracle. Her acquaintances swallow the capsules and burn alive. Kids get hooked on the feeling of omnipotence and die one after another. Her own neighborhood is slowly becoming a dumping ground of human lives, a testing field for someone else's experiment. And the girl who not long ago was just trying to survive begins to understand she can't stay silent any longer. She makes her choice to stand with the ones being used. Frank the cop also finds himself trapped between two fires. His bosses demand he clean power off the streets, but they give him no men, no money, no real support. And gradually the bitter truth dawns on him. Street dealers like Robin are small fry. The real creators of the drug sit high up under solid protection, far beyond the reach of an ordinary cop's hand. The system isn't fighting this evil. The system is covering for it. And just so you don't forget how wildly different these powers can be, here's another one of the corporation's people. A dealer whose skin can blend with the background like a chameleon's. He literally dissolves into a wall, almost impossible to spot. The Major tracks him down, and this hunt shows it. Everyone who works for power is a separate deadly surprise. You never know what the person in front of you is capable of until he ignites, vanishes, or turns into a monster. Gradually, beating name out of name, the Major climbs the chain toward the very source, and every thread leads to one place. Not a house, not a warehouse, not a lab somewhere in the city. A ship, a huge cargo freighter moored at the dock. That's where power is cooked, where the test subjects are held, and where most likely his Tracy is hidden. A floating prison and death factory in a single hull. That's where the Major has to break through, past a crowd of enemies bullets can't touch. Before the decisive assault comes the moment when Robin too has to try power on herself. Cornered with no other way out, she swallows a capsule with a trembling hand, not knowing whether it will save her or kill her. Luck is with her, her body fills with someone else's might. She fights back and survives. But it's a terrifying experience. The girl feels how hard it is to master the power raging inside her, and she understands why so many people die, unable to endure those 5 minutes. By now, a real trust has grown between the Major and Robin. He who lost his daughter unwittingly starts to protect this stranger of a girl, as if trying to atone for his guilt. She, who grew up without a reliable adult beside her, feels for the first time that someone is willing to stand up for her. Their bond is an island of human warmth in a cold, brutal world where everyone else cares only about product, profit, and power. And it's that bond that helps him find the way to the ship. Now it's time to meet the ones at the head of this nightmare. A cold, calculating woman scientist runs the experiment in the city. To her, dying people aren't a tragedy, but a statistic, lines in a report, unavoidable losses on the road to great progress. She believes she's doing something important for all of humanity, and that belief makes her truly dangerous. Beside her are her enforcers, also riding on power, ready to crush anyone who gets in the way. One of those enforcers is especially terrifying. The moment he swallows a capsule, the man turns into a huge armored monster, a mountain of muscle almost impossible to stop. He crushes resistance, breaks bones, fills people with dread by his sheer appearance. Again and again, he stands in the Major's path like a living wall. And to get further, to the ship and to his daughter, the father will have to somehow overcome this beast, while he himself still has no power at all. By this point, Frank fully realizes he's gone too far. The corporation leans on the police, his own people turn their backs on him, and it becomes clear the city has been bought, body and soul. The ones who are supposed to protect people have long worked for the ones who kill them. Frank is left almost alone, an honest cop in a rotten system who now has to choose between comfortable blindness and dangerous truth. And he chooses the truth, whatever it costs. Meanwhile, the Major clashes with the armored enforcer, and it's a terrible fight. The father refuses to the very end to take power himself. He's afraid of it. He remembers all too well what this filth did to him once, what it turned his body and his life into. He doesn't want to become a monster again, but the enemy before him leaves no choice, and the Major begins to understand that without this cursed capsule, he simply won't reach his girl. And the stakes, all the while, are soaring sky high. The corporation has no intention of stopping at one city. New Orleans is only a testing ground to them. Once the experiment here succeeds, power will roll out across the whole country and then across the whole world. Millions of capsules, millions of human roulettes, a new era where anyone's life is turned into experimental material. What's happening on these streets is only a rehearsal for a far greater nightmare, and it can only be stopped here and now. Amid all this thunder, the quiet, personal pain isn't lost. Robin's mother lying at home without strength, neighbors who've lost their children, ordinary people crushed under the roller of someone else's experiment, people the corporation won't even remember. It's for them, for these small, unnoticed lives, that the real fight is being waged. Not to save the world in some grand way, but so that a sick woman has her medicine and a girl has a future. And that is what makes the story truly alive. And now comes the point of no return. To break onto the ship and tear Tracy from the grip of her tormentors, the Major must do the thing he feared most of all. He must take power. He must let back inside himself the monster he suppressed for so long. He looks at the capsule in his palm, and in that gaze is his whole life. Guilt, fear, love for his daughter, and a readiness to burn to ashes if only it saves her. And then he swallows it. What happens next is like none of the powers we've seen. The Major's body starts to blaze from within, as if a volcano has woken inside him. His skin glows. The air around him trembles with heat. Everything he touches melts and burns. He becomes a living furnace, a man of flame, almost unstoppable. But over him, as over everyone, the same merciless 5 minutes are ticking. His own power is both a weapon and a deadly timer at once. The assault on the ship begins. The Major, wrapped in heat, smashes through the defenses, scatters the guards, moves through fire and metal toward the heart of the floating fortress. Enemies fire at him, but how do you stop a blazing force in the shape of a man? And yet he feels the clock at the back of his neck the whole time. Every second of power is precious. If he doesn't reach his daughter while this inner fire still burns, he'll become an ordinary mortal again in the middle of a ship full of killers. Inside the ship, he finally sees the true underside of power. Laboratories, vials, prisoners in cages. And the most horrifying part, how the drug is actually made. Not from plants, not from chemicals in flasks. It's pumped out of a living human, out of a child, turning someone else's agony into a product for the streets. All that glitter of temporary omnipotence, the thing people fought and died for across the whole city, is born here, in the suffering of one locked-away girl. The Major sees it, and more than heat boils up in him. And at last he finds her, Tracy, alive, worn down, frightened, but alive. Father and daughter see each other again after a long separation, and for a moment all the thunder of battle gives way to this reunion. But there's no time for tears. Enemies surround them. The ship boils with combat, and his power's about to run dry. He came here to get her out, and now he has to see it through, while the last ember of that cursed and saving power still smolders inside him. And here the greatest secret of the whole story is revealed. Tracy's gift isn't a single ability like everyone else's. The girl can control life itself, rewriting bodies, her own and others, on the fly. She isn't just the source of power. She is the most powerful force of all that this world has ever seen. That's exactly why the corporation clung to her so hard, exactly why it kept her locked up. A child holding might enough to turn everything upside down. And this child is only beginning to understand what she can do. The cold woman scientist makes her final move. She tries to use Tracy to hold on to her, to turn the girl's gift to her own advantage. And all the while, she never stops preaching about progress, about sacrifices for a great cause, about how humanity will one day thank her. There isn't a drop of remorse in her words, only the icy conviction of a fanatic. She truly believes she stands on the threshold of a new world. Only that world is built on the blood of children and the poor, and the reckoning is already near. But this monstrous power comes at a terrible price. The fire that burst out of the Major proves too great even for himself. It scorches enemies, warps metal, turns everything around into an inferno. But in that same flame, the Father himself burns too. Having given every last drop, the mighty man of fire goes out and collapses onto the deck. Charred, smoking, barely alive. He did what he came to do, but this victory nearly cost him his very life. And now he lies on cold iron, the spark in him about to fade for good. And then the ones this was all for rush to him. His own daughter, whom he just tore out of captivity, and Robin, who has become almost his own. Two girls bend over the burned, motionless body, calling to him, refusing to let him go. The one who saved others the whole way is now helpless himself. And what drags him back from the brink isn't power or fire, but simple human love. The Major clings to their voices like a last thread and slowly, painfully returns to life. At that same moment, the others arrive for the finale. Frank, who stepped over his fear and his orders, and Robin, who's been through hell and high water, are right there to tip the scales. The scattered loners this story threw together finally act as one. On the deck of the burning ship, everything converges. Father and daughter, the honest cop, the street girl, and against them a crumbling empire that wanted to enslave the whole world with a single pill. The reckoning catches up with the villains, and there's a brutal justice in it. The very power they tore out of other people's bodies and sold for profit becomes the instrument of their own destruction. The woman who saw people as disposable material becomes a victim of the nightmare she created. The wheel turns and everyone gets what they deserve. Evil that built itself on the suffering of others collapses under the weight of that very suffering. The factory ship dies in fire and chaos. Prisoners break free. The terrible laboratory sinks beneath the water, and the darkest secret of power is finally dragged into the light. The thing that was cooked in the shadows and killed people by the dozens ceases to exist, at least here and now. Smoke over the water, wreckage, survivors, and among them a father holding close the daughter he walked through all this hell for. A nightmare that lasted years ends in one terrible night. And after that, a quiet, bitter morning after the storm. Father and daughter are free at last, together at last. But this freedom came at a steep price, and the marks of what they endured will stay on them both forever. They look at each other, and in that gaze is a whole life of pain, separation, and a love that turned out, after all, to be stronger. Not a loud triumph, but a weary, hard-won happiness of two people who had to bear far too much just to hold each other again. Robin isn't forgotten either. The girl who started as a frightened street dealer comes out of this story different. Grown up, hardened, alive. She has hope again. Her mother is being cared for. The future no longer feels like a dead end, and her dream of a stage in her own words no longer looks like naive foolishness. The bond born between her and the Major gives her what she lacked most, the feeling that she isn't alone and that her life is worth something. Frank the cop does everything in his power to drag the truth to the surface, but the ending leaves an uneasy aftertaste. Yes, the ship is destroyed. Yes, the local experiment is wrecked. But the enormous machine behind Power isn't broken to the end. Somewhere other laboratories remain, other cities are next in line, other people are ready to continue what was started. One battle is won, but the war, it seems, is only flaring up, and the shadow over the world hasn't gone anywhere. And this is the coldest nerve of the whole story. The formula for power exists. The experiment, as terrible as it is to admit, proved that it all works. A human really can be turned into a super being for a time. And if so, sooner or later someone will reach for this forbidden might again. The hunger for power, easy money, and dominion over others isn't going anywhere. And then the pill, born in suffering, may return to the streets on a scale far larger than before. Dig a little deeper, and this story isn't about superheroes and special effects at all. It's about a society that calmly turns the defenseless into test subjects. About a poor city chosen as a testing ground precisely because no one will stand up for its people. About how real power isn't a 5-minute flash of abilities, but the power of those who decide whose life can be sacrificed for profit. And the question of who is truly all-powerful here sounds far more frightening than any fistfight. Think about it for a second. The most dangerous person in this story turned out to be neither the mountain of muscle nor the man of flame. It was the tidy woman in a lab coat, sincerely believing she was doing good while signing death sentences for entire neighborhoods. Here, evil wears not the mask of a monster, but the face of cold calculation and pretty words about progress. And maybe that's exactly why it's so frightening, because such evil is all too easy to meet in our own, far from fictional world. And at the very center of it all is a simple, eternal thing. A father who walked through hell, betrayed his own fears, and burned almost to ash for one thing: to hold his child again. And a daughter who went from victim and source of someone else's profit to the one who saves. Among all the superpowers, it's this bond, this love, that turned out to be the truest superpower of all. Not the kind that drops out of a capsule, but the kind a person is willing to give everything for. That's the kind of story that unfolds on the hot, musical, dangerous streets of New Orleans. A story about a pill that promises omnipotence and takes lives in return. About a city turned into a laboratory. About a girl who is the source, a father lost and found again, a cop who risked everything, and a street girl who found her courage. A story where every moment of borrowed power cost someone the most terrible price of all. And looking at all this, you can't help but ask yourself a question. Would you risk it? If a capsule like that were placed in your palm, not knowing in advance what you'd get, might beyond your wildest dreams or instant death right on the spot, would you swallow it? Are you ready to play a roulette where the prize is 5 minutes of omnipotence and the loss is your life? Write in the comments which power you'd want to get and whether it would be worth it. If this story gripped you, hit like and subscribe. There are many more stories ahead that make you flinch and then think hard. About people who got the impossible, about the price you have to pay for it, and about the fact that real power isn't always where we're used to looking for it. Thank you for watching to the end, and see you in the next story.